Officer Schlater, the guy with the missing eye. I saw his license plate.
Well, good for you. You mean the guy with the glass eye?
No. When he was running for the car, it was missing.
It's got words. Vengeance is. Don't touch!
Welcome to Amusing Jews, where we celebrate Jewish contributors and contributions to American popular culture. I'm Jonathan Friedman. My co-host Joey Angelfield has the night off. Producer-engineer Mike Tomren is working somewhere behind the scenes. Amusing Jews is a project of Adat Chaverim, Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, the Shul Jewish Cultural Community, and Atheists United Studios. If you build it, they will come. This phrase is pretty commonplace and commonly misquoted from the 1989 sports fantasy film Field of Dreams, where Kevin Costner's character hears a voice telling him, "If you build it, he will come," referring to the field he builds for long-dead baseball legend, Shulish Joe Jackson. And the phrase happens to be wrong, at least most of the time. Creating something viable, even if it's something people want, requires branding, marketing, advertising, and so on. Our guest today knows all about that. Jeffrey Breyer is a creative marketer, media developer, and brander of food-themed entertainment, consumer products, and companies. His long list of brand partners includes Barbie, Apple's Beats, ABC, Disney, Doritos, Sanrio, Amazon, Mattel, NBC, Universal, Toyota, Sony, UPN, Betty Crocker, McDonald's, Good Humor, General Mills, Minute Maid, Coke, Smurfs, NASA JPL, and many more. Jeffrey, welcome to Amusing Jews.
Hi there, how are you? I'm Jeffrey Breyer.
So you started in the entertainment business at a young age and played Skeezy in Last Action Hero opposite Arnold Schwarzenegger. Countless boys dreamed of being in a Schwarzenegger movie, which is essentially what that movie's all about, but you actually got to do it. What was that like?
It was great. It was my first film. I was 14 years old, and it was really a dream come true. It's quite funny how it all kind of happened. Most people, at least at the time, for commercial auditions more often than TV and film, they would videotape you for a commercial audition, not so much for TV and film. And at the time that I got the call for Last Action Hero, I wasn't feeling well. I was sick from school that day. And my mom, got a call that I had an audition after school. I have to preface, at the time, I had a commercial agent and I had a theatrical agent for TV and film. And the funny thing was, I was relatively new to the industry, and I didn't know that you should probably have a different resume for both agencies. But I had my commercial agent logo on there and my theatrical logo. And just letting you know, this can lead to confusion because both agencies were on the same resume. So I wasn't feeling well, but needless to say, I put on a happy face and went to the audition, of which it was really strange. There was a random scene that I was given the sides for. There were three characters. There was one character's name was Skeezy, another one was Danny, and the other was Slater. And I had no idea what this was for. The only thing was, as I said, things can get confusing when you have both agents on there. They accidentally called my commercial agent to tell me, and it was my commercial agent that sent me out for it. And I said, well, what is this Last Action Hero thing? And the woman from the agency said, I don't know, I think it's a toy commercial. So I went in thinking I was auditioning for the Last Action Hero toy commercial. And it was the strangest thing. I couldn't reading the sides of the scene, and it made no sense because there was no product. It was just a random scene. So I go into the audition still thinking it's a toy commercial, and I walk in, and sure enough, there's a camera. And often for commercials, they videotaped you. So I still thought I was going out for the Last Action Hero toy. And the casting director turns on the camera and says, before we get started, do you have any questions? I said, yes, a lot of them, because I don't understand the premise of this toy commercial. And they're like, what are you talking about? I said, I was told I'm here for the last action hero toy commercial. Like, that's funny, Jeffrey, but you were misinformed because this is a movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I was told to read for the part of Skeezy, and I did. And I probably had absolutely the worst audition ever, thinking that I was going out for a toy commercial.
My name is Skeezy, Skeezy, sir. S-K-E.
I left, and that was it. It was really random. Monday, I get a call from my theatrical agent who says, did you go out for a project called The Last Action Hero? I said, yeah, my commercial agent sent me out for that on Friday. They said, well, there was a mix-up. And I said, you know what I mean? I said, I'm still confused. I think it was a toy commercial. Like, Jeffrey, no, it's a movie, and you booked it. And I'm like, what? And that was pretty funny. And I was actually Arnold Schwarzenegger and John McTiernan, the director of Die Hard, who actually cast me from the tape.
Well, there is something unfortunate about that role that you played because Danny stole the kiss from Bridget Wilson.
Yeah, I got a little action, but she was older than I was. And then she went on to marry Pete Sampras in real life. But it was just really strange. And the other thing that was really unique about that movie was it didn't do too well in the theaters for a couple reasons. One, it came out 1 week after Jurassic Park, and it kind of ate up all of our box office. Also, this was the first film ever that a star was making $20 million at a time. And Arnold was the highest paid actor in Hollywood at that time. And there was a lot of resentment that he was making those dollars. And that's one of the reasons it didn't do as well as they were hoping. Also, while shooting the scene that I was in, it was actually at a house in North Hollywood. And the production company screwed up the house so much that they rented that they had to relocate a family of 4 after the movie was finished. So that also went into the budget because it was a multi-million-dollar house.
Yeah, there was a pretty epic fight scene in that house.
Yeah, the pipes were destroyed. There was nothing you could. It was unlivable after the end of that film. And then the other thing that's funny is when I first met Arnold, he's a big guy, and I was just a little kid. And by the way, he's got these huge hands, and I do voice impressions as well. And call me crazy, but in my first 5 minutes of meeting Arnold Schwarzenegger, we were sitting at craft services, and all these other people were standing around. Right away, I introduced myself, and he was happy to meet me. And I said to him within the first 5 minutes of meeting him, can I do my impression of you for you? And I got to preface that Arnold was the executive producer on the film, and he ran that production like a ship. You didn't laugh, sneeze, or go to the bathroom unless Arnold okayed it. So all these people were standing around me, and here I am, 14 years old, and they're like, do my impression of Arnold for Arnold. So this is what I said to him. I'm the party pooper. I come to poop at your parties. Save some toilet paper. I'll be back. Next thing I know, there's dead silence around me. And I'm like, oh crap, he's going to kill me. And then he starts laughing. And then, of course, once he starts laughing, it's infectious and everybody else on the set starts laughing too. And so every time he'd see me, he'd start cracking up and he says, you do me better than I do me. So every time he'd see me, which is weird that an adult man would say to a young boy, do me, but that's what he would say every time he'd see me, do me, do me. So, which is very kind of strange, but that was his thing. So fast forward a couple months later, we're at the wrap party at Sony Studios. And he and Maria come in fashionably late. Maybe they were a little tipsy from a party from before, perhaps. And right away, he sees me across the room, and the only person that he catches eyes on is me. And my parents are there, too, at the wrap party. And right away, he says to me, Skeezy, you know who this is? I said, yes, it's your wife, Maria. We had met at parties and then on the... and he says to me, it's an insult for you if you don't kiss her in front of all these people. I'm like, excuse me? He's like, do me and kiss my wife. It was the strangest thing he said. So I'm like, okay. So first I'm doing my Arnold, and then Maria's standing there, and I go to kiss her on the cheek, and I have to preface my first kisses with a Kennedy. I was 14 years old, and I kiss her on the cheek, and she decides to go in from my mouth and gives me a little bit of a tongue. Which is very strange to happen at 14, and there were a bazillion people at the wrap party, and my parents were hiding their eyes. on the other side of the room. And they took a bazillion photos that night. And I literally thought the photos in the tabloids the next day would be Maria Shriver and 14-year-old boyfriend, but they never printed the photos.
Enjoying the show? Click like and subscribe.
So you also had a guest spot on the very underrated Weird Al show, which ran on CBS on Saturday mornings for just one season, I believe 1997-98. It was a surrealist, non-educational, educational program, reminiscent of Pee-wee's Playhouse, but even weirder.
Yes.
Any Weird Al stories?
Yes, absolutely. The thing that was funny about that show was they had a mantra, was it's a kid's show, no one will notice. It was interesting. It was produced by Dick Clark Productions. And it was the only show on CBS that was a AFTRA production and not a SAG production. That's before the unions had joined forces. And because of that, it was the cheapest show to produce on national television. And that because of that, it was kind of their mantra. It's a kid's show, no one will notice. So I remember the episode that I did, we were actually shot at a pool in the valley somewhere. And the funny thing is we were supposed to be the swimming swim team from hell, essentially, because we did a parody of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and it was Sabrina the Teenage Fish.
Yo, Sabrina, I'd come to your house after school, but my scuba tank isn't working.
And she won the swim meet because she's a fish, obviously. So the funny thing is, I get there, and I hadn't seen my wardrobe until I got there, and they give me the tiniest pair of Speedos ever known to man that I had to wear on national television. And I don't think anybody has the body to wear one, and certainly I didn't. And that was my outfit, and a pair of goggles and a swim cap. And I have to preface, we did not look like a swim team. There was one girl with really, really long hair who was, because it was the Weird Al show, her hair came, shoulder length outside of her swim cap. Another guy had pagers and a cell phone hanging off of his swim trunks and all sorts of crazy. And so I have to preface, we often in TV don't necessarily shoot the scenes in order. So because we were using a real pool, and they were at the facility there, we only had a limited amount of time we could be in the pool. So we were shooting those scenes first. And then we were going to, but in actuality, the hallway scene at the school, which was actually shot at the same facility, took place earlier in the story. But because of scheduling, we shot the pool stuff first. And so it was supposed to be right after the gym meet, the swim meet, of which they were gonna award Sabrina the Teenage Fish her medal, which makes no sense because she's standing outside of the water. None of it made any sense. Either way, I said to Al and everybody, the scene's supposed to take place after a swim meet. Shouldn't we be wet? He said, "Oh, it's a kid's show. No one will notice." And that was kind of the mantra with everything. So the next scene, which is funny, is in the hallway, and we're making fun of her. And I have to tell you, the swim cap I had on was really, really tight. And I had this red band across my forehead. So I said to makeup and wardrobe, since in theory this was supposed to take place before the swim meet, shouldn't we fix my hair or give me some makeup that I don't have a red band across my forehead? No, it's a kid's show. No one will notice. It was kind of funny that was what they went with on everything. And then at one point, one of the booms was in the shot, but it was Weird Al, so maybe that was intentional. I don't know, but the whole thing was a farce. And they said, okay, whatever. No one's going to care. It's a kid's show. No one will notice.
Well, that ended up being a self-fulfilling prophecy because when it was on TV, nobody noticed that either.
Exactly. It was, and then it was quickly gone.
Yeah, exactly. So switching gears, in your work, branding and advertising, you've spearheaded wow factor concepts. What's a wow factor for those of us on the consumer end of the marketing process?
Well, I think that's anything that really makes a splash. I am one who really likes to swing for the fences. I like to find new and innovative ways to get people to buy things, to try things. In fact, for example, for a while, I used to work in kosher catering. And when I was at a company called Got Kosher, for instance, I had one job and one job only there, which was to make kosher food mainstream and cool. That was my whole job. And in doing so, we had great food, and I was the only one in the company who didn't have a Got Kosher card. I didn't want one. My card said GK Catering. And basically, I called up all of my contacts in the branding world, the theme park world, the entertainment world, and I managed to get kosher food into places it had never been before. In fact, I managed to get us into Universal Studios at the Jurassic Park Cafe, which we had, for the first time ever, fresh kosher options in the park. We were at Disney Studios, we were at Warner's, a bazillion, the Geffen Playhouse, and hotels, and wrap parties, you name it. And everybody and their brother was loving our food. In fact, I even did a Filipino Catholic gay wedding that was entirely kosher, which was kind of interesting. Our florist at the time loved our food. He worked with us at all our events. And when he got married, he's like, would you guys cater it? I'm like, sure. So, that was kind of interesting, having a completely Orthodox Jewish staff doing a gay Filipino wedding that both the men were wearing bridal dresses, but they loved our food, and there were no Jews in attendance except us. So I like just taking a stand, trying new things, and innovating things.
You were responsible for one of the biggest product placement deals ever. Over 4 minutes of screen time for the Stuart Weitzman shoes billboard in the 2002 film Spiderman. How did that deal go down? And in general, how does product placement work in films?
At the time I was working, this was almost 20 years ago now, I was working for a company called the Ross Group, and we were a very small niche product placement firm. We focused on wines, couture, clothing, speedboats, all sorts of high-end niche products. And it was a way of finding ways to have products in scenes for TV shows and movies. Sometimes it was scripted, sometimes not. For example, in Mr. and Mrs. Smith, we had a client that was a clutch purse, and I knew the prop master, and so there's a scene that she kind of jumps out of a window, but her purse transforms into a grappling hook, and that wasn't even on the script, but I managed to have it changed from just being a grappling hook that went out the window to a clutch that transformed into a grappling hook. Another movie, it just said that, I think this was Catwoman actually, that they jumped out of a window and landed on top of a taxi. Well, I figured, taxi has branding on it. So I said, okay, how about we put a brand on there? They like that too. So in the case of Spiderman, this was kind of really interesting how this happened. Stuart Weitzman was our biggest client at the time. We were a small company. There were only like 6 or 8 of us. And I wore a lot of hats there. I wear a lot of hats in general. And I have one on now, my last action hat. So while I was there, I was both their creative director and in charge of business development. And so Mary, may she rest in peace, she passed away of COVID a couple of years ago. Great lady. She said to me in our staff meeting, here's the deal. Rumor has it that Stuart Weitzman may leave us. They're our biggest client. If they do, our other smaller subsequent clients may leave us too. So, Jeffrey, you're in charge of creative and biz dev. No pressure. Find a way to save the company. Good luck. There's just, a pretty tall task to follow. I was like, okie dokie. And then I'm a really big believer in making things happen. And there was a woman who sat next to me who was the world's biggest naysayer. And she scoffed in the meeting when she said, Jeffrey's going to save the company. And I said, I really hope that I can, because otherwise you're going to be out of work too. So, if you like your job, you might want to, be nicer to me. So I was like, okay, crud, that's a really big, tall order to fill. So not only could it has to be something that was good for Stuart Weitzman, it had to be company changing for us. So I'm a research junkie, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, how in the world am I going to make this happen? So the first thing I went to that week was the trades. What was going on that week? I was looking at the Hollywood Reporter and certainly, Variety and everything else going on. And ironically, the only thing that they were in touch talking about that week was pre-production for the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. And it mentioned in the articles that there was going to be a big fight scene between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin, which you may remember. But people don't remember, though, that there was going to be one billboard behind them for 4.5 minutes of screen time for the entire fight. So everybody wanted to see who was going to win out according to the trades and get the billboard in Spider-Man, because it would essentially be a 4.5 minute commercial for whatever brand that was. And in the articles, everybody from Pepsi to Diesel Jeans were mentioning they were willing to throw down $8 to $10 or $12 million to win out and be the billboard. And of course, the biggest question was who was going to get the deal. And I'm like, I would like to have my client be in Spider-Man, but I realized that my shoe client didn't have that kind of money. So I'm like, that's a pipe dream. I said, okay, I guess next. But then I turned the page, and ironically, the next page, because it was Sony that was producing the film, they had a couple random photos related to Sony Studios and the whole article. And there was a photo of the then president of Sony and his wife on the red carpet from some random photo. I looked down at her shoes in the photo, and I could swear there's an SW on the side of her shoes. And I said, holy smokes. So I went to Wire Image, blew up the original photo, and sure enough, she's wearing a pair of my shoes. And I said, oh my gosh, this is my chance. So it was a Friday afternoon, and I cold called Sony. It was right at the end of the day, and the woman who is the gatekeeper at Sony was in a good mood. She was just about to go home for the weekend. It was the last call she was taking, and it was her birthday. She said, you know what, Jeffrey? I'm in a great mood. It's my birthday. I'm going to transfer to the executive office. Great. Unbeknownst to me, at that very same moment, the then president of Sony, who's now retired, had just sent home his own personal assistant for the day. And he answered his own phone, which never happens. And he thought he was actually expecting a call from his wife. So when the phone rang, he thought it was his wife on the other line. And the first word out of his mouth was, honey. And I said, yes, for the right price and the right deal, I could be your honey too. And he laughed and he said, who is this? And why are you on my phone? And I said to him, my name is Jeffrey Breyer. I represent the Ross Group, and I really want your billboard in Spider-Man. I've done my research, and I'm willing to play. And he said to me, wow, got a lot of chutzpah calling me. Okay, so how many millions are you going to offer the studio in exchange for your product placement? None. Don't hang up, though. Here's the deal. I've done my research. As I said, I know your wife is into shoes, and I actually know she's a size 6.5. So I'm willing to offer her 60 pairs of shoes, the entire fall line in her size, take it or leave it. He says, hang on a second. Calls his wife, says, I got this crackpot on the phone who wants the billboard in Spider-Man. And he wants to offer you a gift. Me a gift? Yes. So what does he want to offer you? 60 pairs of shoes, the entire fall line, in a size 6.5. I go, that's my size. I said, he says, he's done his research. He goes, clearly. So she says, what brand? She says, Stuart Weitzman. She goes, oh my God, it's my favorite shoe company. Take the deal. So I get off the phone. I tell my company, I've saved the company. And then I said to my team that we now have to call Connecticut. Like, why do we have to call Connecticut? Because I made this up on the fly. I didn't know if there were 60 pairs of shoes, but we had to find them in a size 6.5. So we send the 60 pairs of shoes to Sony. We shoot the billboard. They shoot the movie. It comes out, 8-10 months later. Becomes a huge international hit globally. And I actually had the numbers to show that because of 4.5 minutes of screen time for Stuart Weitzman, that my sales went up, or the sales of the shoe, 500%, which is huge. It also helped that their actual flagship store was in Manhattan, and the scene took place in Manhattan. So that was really huge for Stuart Weitzman. And it could have ended there, but the perfect storm continued. Because later that year, it was nominated for an Oscar. The scene they showed globally during the Oscars, my shoe scene. It wins the Oscar that night for special effects. And then the same telecast, they say it showed the same shoe scene a second time, which was great. And it could have ended there, Diana, but it didn't. Because what happened was the first amalgamation of the DVD box, you could actually read Stuart Weitzman between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin, all based on a cold call. And the fact is, I mean, talk about not listening to naysayers. I didn't. And I also managed to get them into the second film, too.
We'll meet again, Spider-Man!
There actually is now a new addendum to that story. So I went to USC. I'm a USC alum. And I get all sorts of emails from the Alumni Association all the time. And sometimes it kind of just goes into the digital trash. Until one email I saw about 2 months ago said Stuart Weitzman, the actual man who owned Stuart Weitzman's shoes, was speaking at USC. I said, I think this is something worthy to go to. I had never met him before. So I went to USC. There are about 300 people in the room. And Mr. Weitzman he's in his early 80s now, talked for about 2 hours about business and career in his life. So he was just talking about all these wonderful things in his career. And at the end, he opened it to questions. And like I said, there were 300 plus people in the room, and I'm sitting in the front row, and I introduced myself and said thank you for coming, and I was really excited to meet him. And I said to him, talk about all these great tentpole things that happened in your career. What about Spider-Man? He goes, oh my God, Spider-Man, the enigma of my life. He goes, I don't really know much about it. All I know is we're in this huge movie. We gave some random lady like 60 pairs of shoes. Our sales went up like 500%, and we paid no money for it. He goes, why? Do you know anything about it? So at that very moment, I opened up my jacket and showed the Spider-Man t-shirt that I'm wearing. And I said, yeah, I think I know a thing. And so that same story that I just told you a second ago, I now have told Stuart Weitzman himself and the other 300 people in the room. And he was very thankful that he finally figured out this piece of the puzzle that he never knew. So afterwards, just as many undergrads that wanted to talk to him wanted to talk to me as well. And so I probably could have had 50 interns that night if I wanted them. And so I was talking to all these people, and just as many people were coming up to me as him. And then afterwards, he and I were talking for a few moments. And he says to me, after, having my sales go up, hugely, 20 years ago, Jeffrey, what are you doing with yourself right now? Well, I'm in the theme park space. And I'm currently developing a magic, horror, and sci-fi theme park for Las Vegas. He goes, Las Vegas. I have a dear friend who lives in Las Vegas, and he's kind of a big deal there. I'm like, oh, cool. He says to me, as a matter of fact, this friend was my college roommate and the guy who wrote the first check to start Stuart Weitzman's shoes. I said, very interesting. What's your friend's name? Steve Wynn, as in the Wynn Hotel and every other major property there. And then at that very moment, just as random things happened to me, a young woman wearing a USC sweatshirt walked up to us at that very moment. She might have been I think she was like a freshman. And she said, did you just say Steve Wynn? And he said, yes. She goes, that's my grandfather. We said, what? Apparently she had seen that Stuart Weitzman was speaking that night. She spoke to her grandfather, and he said, oh, you should go to the event. You've never met my college roommate. So that night, I also got Steve Wynn's granddaughter's contact information as well.
Yeah, so as you've alluded to, you've also been involved in a number of theme parks, including Digital Prism in South Korea, Wild Resort and Theme Park in Chicago, the Smurfs parks in 5 cities, and others. What is your involvement with the theme park apparatus?
I'm a creative director. I'm an idea guy. Basically, in the theme park space, I'm what they call a show writer. And anything that's considered part of the show, the public sees. So whether it's a ride, a show, an attraction, the branding, even down to the themed trash can, a show writer has to create that world. I helped develop as a third-party consultant years ago for Disney Imagineering. I helped give up a lot of development ideas for Toy Story Land, for Florida, which also was in Japan as well. Helped come up with concepts for their Slinky Dog ride and some of the visuals of the park there and the land. I also was part of the development team working for a company called Transmersive at the time, which was a media think tank in Santa Monica. And one of our clients was Universal Creative. And I helped develop Universal Singapore. So a lot of my ideas were part of the Shrek Far, Far Away Land for them, the Battlestar Galactica roller coaster, the Steven Spielberg special effects stage, as well as the Madagascar water ride. I was the creative director for a project called Digital Prism, as in like light, for Korea. But over time, it became a Digital Prison with an N, because the crazy thing was I developed this whole park. It was going to be the hub of a new planned community. I was going to, and it was going to have bullet trains and living and everything kind of radiating off of it. Developed this, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. And right now it's still a hole in the ground. They basically started the project, made a landfill, started building bullet trains to start bringing all the things in. And what happened was there was a major rail strike in South Korea, which is still going on to this day. And the rails were owned by the Korean government. The trains were owned by the theme park company. But because there was a rail strike, they weren't allowed to put the trains on the rails, which meant the park and everything else never happened. So I master planned this huge three-story indoor park that is beautiful on paper. I don't know if it'll ever get built, but that's kind of the nature of the theme park industry. It ebbs, it flows, just like the roller coasters we build, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, I mean, you're reminding me with Passover, we call it eating a story. And it sounds like theme parks, I never really thought about it before, but you're basically living in a story when you're at the park. And every little element you're saying is a part of that narrative in a way.
And if you do it well, you should be not seeing the outside world. Like particularly when you're in Disneyland, it's fully immersive. You don't think about the outside world and what's in it. If it's done right, even the transitions between the lands should be subtle, and it shouldn't be jarring. I mean, like, for example, in the theme park space, we call this, in many cases, adaptive reuse. Of you have a space and you retool it or reuse it in a new and unique way. And the other thing that's kind of really fun about the theme park space is we often misuse or retool technology in ways that has never been done. Like, for example, a friend of mine was telling me when he was working on the Twilight Zone Tower Terror, for instance, they went to some of the top elevator companies in the world to figure out the ride apparatus. Usually, if you go on an elevator, the goal is to make it as smooth as possible. And but they said, no, we want to change the apparatus. We want it to be frightening. We want it to fall, and we don't want it to be a smooth elevator ride. And the elevator operators looked at them like they were crazy. Like, why in the world would you not want a smooth elevator ride? And they had to go to almost 60 elevator companies before someone was willing to take a chance to undo the technology. And then I also worked on 5 Smurf parks. And one was going to be a 150-acre park for Lake Elsinore, California. All Smurf. It was going to be on a huge scale, and you were going to feel like you were a Smurf. I had this really cool technology we were developing that any reflective surface in the park, you would see yourself in real time as your Smurf avatar. Unfortunately, COVID happened, and the Smurfs, which is a family-owned Belgian company, thought the world was coming to an end and pulled the plug on all 5 Smurf parks. There was one investor who had put in, I don't know, $40, $50 million. And it was the saddest day when we had to give him back his money when the Smurfs pulled out. And then, unfortunately, the man died shortly thereof, COVID himself. So I have no idea what ever happened to that money. But that was the end of that project. But I master planned, I don't know, close to 90 Smurf attractions. Maybe someday they'll go ahead and rebuild them. But as of right now, you never know.
Do you have a specific storytelling or marketing philosophy that you've honed and implemented over the years?
Yes. They're both Walt Disney quotes, who's kind of my hero. And a lot of times I kind of see myself as the Jewish non-anti-Semitic version of Walt Disney. Seriously, and I'll actually, they don't actually. I had a lot of friends and family who actually worked for Disney at the time when Walt was there, and they were Jewish and actually had no problems with him, including the Sherman brothers who helped create Mary Poppins. So my two favorite quotes, which I said are Walt's quotes, but I kind of live by. One is, it's kind of fun to do the impossible. And I kind of believe that. I thought it was kind of impossible with the whole Spider-Man thing, yet I made it happen. The other quote that I love and I actually have across from my bed is, if you dream it, you can do it. And it's kind of, as you throw back to what you were saying earlier, if you build it, he will come. It's that whole concept that if you have faith in yourself, go out there and try it. You know, there are going to be plenty of naysayers out there who are going to tell you, yes, no, maybe so. But if you don't take a chance, it's not going to happen. And in fact, you know, the visionaries of the world, everybody from the George Lucases to the Disneys to the Picassos and everybody else, and the Amelia Earharts, these were all people who took chances, who kind of said, I'm going to give it a go. And were inventors and entrepreneurs and visionaries, and they took a chance. And sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't.
Are you working on anything now that you'd like to tell us about?
I am developing a magic, horror, and sci-fi park for Las Vegas. It's a $100 million project that I've been actively working on for about the last 8 months, and it's been pure sweat equity. Of the 100 million, we've raised the last zero. In actuality, so if, to the world, if anybody's looking to raise money for a park or fund a park, I'm actively looking. I have a great team, and we're ready to move, and we have a full business plan and full concept, and it's the kind of thing I think people would go to. It's just a matter of having someone pay for it, and that's kind of where we're at.
Well, Jeffrey, if you can dream it, you can do it. Thank you so much for joining us. And to our audience, now back to your regularly scheduled lives.
Amusing Jews is here to amuse you. If you like being amused, go ahead and click like and subscribe.